Hello, and welcome back to the Line Pro Dev channel. I'm your host, Phil Cutting with Line Pro Dev, and I'm so excited to cover this topic with you to help you guys get set up for success. Budgeting. It's the most critical step and where I get the biggest amount of questions. So sit back, enjoy the conversation, and if you have questions, throw them in the comments below. I'm happy to talk about it. We want to make sure that when we're budgeting, we're planning for the full life cycle that we plan to execute. So we have to plan for some research from analytics, so the planning architecture. We also have to plan for development, and we also have to make sure that we have enough money to market, to create ads, to create content, and to do any of the maintenance costs and deployment costs they're going to have to sustain to keep this app going long enough to give it virality and an opportunity to come to life. So, why we plan ahead on developing the budget is ensuring we have financial control, right? It makes it look good for investors that you plan ahead, you stay on plan, and you handle changes well. It helps prevent overspending. It helps keep development on track. A good budget is going to help you set your milestones up so that you know what to expect along every stage of the app cycle, from development to launching to sustain it into the future. And here's some key concepts when you're going through it, right? First of all, you have the development stage, which may, or if it hasn't been done already, then you have to include the planning stage in architecture. So generally, I'm looking at 10 to 20% budget of the entire project for architecture and planning. I'm looking at another 10 to 20% for UI UX, that's designing and user experience, and I'm looking to have another $5,000 to $15,000 at the end for launching the marketing, right? And just to give a little bit more detail on each of these stages, let me break it down just a little bit more, right? So development is going to include architecture, project documentation, set up expectations so the designers know what to do. Then you have, and that's going, okay, so just to give a rough cost of that, a lot of times you're looking at $5,000 to $10,000, right? A good budget for starting an app for an MVP, you're looking at $50,000 to $150,000, right? And 5 to 10 of that should go to architecture, right? Another 4 to 10,000 should be going to design and UX. And for the front end developments, you're looking at 10 to 30,000. And front end includes the implementation of all the user designs that were created, so that you have a nice intuitive application that flows well and has a central theme. And this is a similar, all these are similar if you're creating an MVP or if you're doing a chunk of work for a significant deliverable, right? Maybe the actual numbers will be smaller, right, if it's an existing project, but it's good to understand the whole concept. And the next part you want to have is backend development, and this is generally going to run 15 to 50,000, and this is all the server side stuff. We're looking at business logic. We're looking at database management, security. We're making sure that we have a way to store records. We're working with other services and APIs, and we're developing the APIs for your web browser application or your mobile app application, or for other systems to tie into your system. And when you're planning all this, you want to understand the different kinds of hardware that's going to be used in your front end. For example, mobile apps. You want to have small and large mobile phones. You want to make sure that it looks decent on tablets, and you want to make sure that it looks good on desktops or monitors, depending on your target market. But definitely there's going to be a variation in there that you should plan for. On the back end, you want to make sure that you have well-documented APIs. If documentation is important anywhere, it's in the API stage, which is where the developers, the front-end developers, and maybe your clients are going to be tying into your servers. So this is not hard to do. I like to use Swagger. There's a lot of options out there, and we can talk more about that if you have a question on that. And the way you look at it is an easy way to explain this is if you have a food delivery app, right? And you're going to have that front end user interface, and it's the part that's on the phone. So it's people seeing the menus, it's people clicking order and paying, right? But what happens is on the back end, you have a database of all the menus. You have a user profile. So you have this database of user profiles and their interactions. You have systems that monitor this connection between the two, looks at their history and how they interact and communicate with your app. And finally, you have the purchase and processing, the charging flow, so that you're interacting with your payment gateway. A lot of times you use Stripe, there's Square, there's all kinds of options. And, in certain regions, they have specific options that they like to use. So a little bit of particularity per your region is going to help determine what makes sense for you. In America, a lot of it's Stripe. In Switzerland, it's Twint. In a lot of Europe, Stripe works great also. So you just got to know your specifics and what you're actually looking to do. Square is another good solution, but we can talk about that another time. I digress. So here's a nice way to kind of break it down, right? Your front end is going to be around 30% of your development budget. UX is going to be around 20, right? And back end, you're looking at 40 to 50%. And this is fairly general. So here now this is going to kind of reflect differently if you are doing native apps or if you're doing cross-platform apps. This right here is more of a cross-platform app budget to know what to expect. And then you're going to have operational costs, and operational costs are the server costs, the updating the server, updating code, making sure dependencies aren't depreciated. They're the actual hardware itself, right? So these are ongoing costs that you have to plan for. And what I like to recommend is that you plan for around $200 to $500 per month starting out, and make sure that you're developing a system that scales well and is profitable once you start hitting thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of users. A lot of the times I like to use either AWS, Amazon Web Services, or sometimes I'll use VPSs out there. There's a lot of options. A2 hosting seems to be pretty good lately, but there's a lot of others. Bluehost and HostGator and you name it. A lot of cPanel based systems where you can go in there and create whole servers that run on a shared device. And as you get bigger, you can upgrade them and eventually move them into a dedicated device. But a lot of times, a lot of people find that AWS is a great place to start. Depends on the upper limit of how many users you expect to have, right? So if you're expecting massive quick hits to your massive growth real quick, AWS is better. If you're expecting kind of like continuous grow with a limited market size, VPS might be the better way to go. VPSs tend to be a little bit cheaper. AWS, a little bit more pricey, but a lot more scalable and quick to respond. And just you're looking at the annual cost for maintaining your servers to be around $5,000 to $10,000 per year. And the reason being is that you're going to have regular maintenance. You're going to have code bases that expire and need to be updated. You're going to have new features. You're going to have changes in operating systems, security. You want to make sure you stay ahead of. And all this often requires skilled labor who people are working in this field all the time, and keep an eye on it over time just to make sure that the system compatibility and performance is optimized and top-notch. Yeah, and you're looking at probably on your annual cost, the server, the actual physical servers, not if you do it yourself, you want to do some kind of cloud system, that's running like 40%, 60% for maintenance. Rarely does it make sense to have your own physical server nowadays. There are times when you have to, right? And there's times when it does make sense, but it's pretty rare that you really want to have your own server farm and have to take on that responsibility and the cost of that. by using a system like AWS or a virtual private server like A2, then what you're doing is you're leveraging their talent in mass to maintain some of these server systems and the hardware, so that you don't have to have all that skill in house, which can be really pricey. It's just very efficient. And just take a look at this. When we're looking to the markets, the operational cost distribution is aligned with the industry standards, right? So this is a general number breakdown. We find that some systems are more expensive, right? So if you're doing video delivery, then you're going to have a higher server cost. And you can kind of like gauge this by how much data flow is, right? The data flow is the most generally expensive part over time. The other part is computational compute. If you're doing a lot of AI, for example, and you're processing that data from the AI, so you're going to have a lot of processing time. You may have minimal data transferred, but you're also having AI systems that you're paying into as a third-party vendor, OpenAI or Grok, or you name it, right? Those are systems that have to be paid for and maintained, and they evolve over time. So you have to make sure you keep your eyes on those too. Now, you've done your discovery, you've done your design, you've developed your product, and now it's time to get the app in the world. You're going to have some initial marketing costs, and I find that this tends to be around $5,000 to $20,000, and this range reflects the cost of launching a comprehensive digital marketing campaign that includes social media ads, influencer collaborations, targeted online promotions, app store promotions. And these costs right here just are general terms. Depending on how saturated your market is, it could be higher. If you have blue ocean opportunities, yeah, those come down a lot, right? There's various factors that go into it, and also influencers tend to become easier to acquire as you build your app and you have the reputation. So some of these things are harder to do right away, right? So depending on how you communicate and how you work it out with the influencers and your audience's interest in the upcoming development of your app. There's ways to bring them in early, and there's ways to gauge the community that really helps your app grow when you're looking at influencers. And then you have the App Store optimization. It's called ASO. So if you see ASO, know it's App Store optimization. And this can cost between $1,000 to $5,000, and typically falls into this range because of the specialized nature of optimizing for keywords, for visual improvements, for SEO-based descriptions, for keyword research, for market research, and it falls into part of your overall marketing launch campaign. And there's another side that you could consider, which is creating some branding that goes into that. And I don't mean like Coca-Cola style branding, right? We're not trying to create generally we're not trying to create like crazy funny videos with talking bears or Santa Claus. What we're looking to do is create a brand, a definitive brand that people can connect with through interviews, through content, through creating a YouTube channel or Instagram channel. There's a lot of ways to dive into this. That can range anywhere between $2,000 to $40,000, depending on how long you want to do this campaign. I recommend considering launching with either a 15 or a 45-day social campaign that helps build up on the marketing and ties in with the rest of your branding and your organic approach. But if I had to pick with one, I'd start with digital ads, with a community, with influencers. That's $5,000 to $20,000 price point that we talked about initially. And let's just take a look at some of the trends, right? So we have a global market in 2023 of around $582 billion, and this is based from Statistica. And these revenues include in-app purchases, subscription, advertisements, and it's been growing around 9.5% annually, year over year, for the past 4 or 5 years, and even longer. And what we're looking at is just continued increase in smartphone penetration into the App Store presence, right? A move away from desktop apps into mobile apps. And we find that mobile apps and browser apps are web apps or progressive web apps are pulling people into other mediums on the larger screen, tablets and desktops. And the big breakdown, I see gaming as being around 60%, health and fitness being 10%, and the others split at 30%. And this includes social media, productivity, entertainment. Those make up a large part of that 30% of the ad market. And something you really want to consider early on is how do we impress investors? How do we set up our business to be investable from the very beginning and know what their expectations are? So investors have been receiving a 20 to 30% return on investment for the past 4 or 5 years, even longer. And sometimes it's much higher, but the average is 20 to 30%. And this reflects an attractive investment opportunity in apps for investors. So they're still looking for this market, and it's driven by the revenue generated from in-app purchases, advertisements, and subscriptions. So when investors are looking at the potential of investing in your app, these are what they really want to see. And that's why it's so important to get out a good MVP so that you have just a core fundamental understanding of your return on investment, what it's going to cost to get to the next level, and how investor money can come in there and increase that value. And just again, if you're trying to talk to investors, here's some things to throw out there, right? The app market has been growing 9.5% per year, and we're looking at having a market share of over $600 billion in 2024. We'll see how close or far above that we come. It seems like that's on track. Doesn't seem to be anything indicating that that's going to be missing our target. And this 9.5% return is pretty good for many in track. This growth is good, and the 20 to 30% return on investment is really good for a lot of investors, especially those that are looking for more stable and traditional forms of investment. And here's how we establish a clear understanding to alleviate investor concerns. First, we want to make sure that we have that clear budget set up. We want to make sure that we have what we planned and allocated to get to our next set of milestones, and that we have a smooth process to get us to our turning points of which we want to bring investor capital. We let the investors know that for any set of development, we're looking at a budget being around 30% for front end of development costs to be around 30% of that budget. And we're looking at operational costs to be around 40% of the whole budget. And the remaining costs, we're looking for marketing. So you want to make sure that you're hitting all three of those key legs so that investors take you seriously. This is standard, right? Every business has to have a marketing sales component to it to get it out there to get recognized. And there's a lot of ways to do that. So just keep in mind that it's in plan there. It needs to be part of that budget. And you want to make sure that your app is scalable so that you both have the opportunity to scale and that there's a market segment that's large enough to draw attention for app users and that it's profitable, right? So you want to make sure that you have a lot of leeway to increase value of the app. And if you're using the kind of technology we talked about, AWS or a planned VPS, where you know what the expectation on the scalability is and this market segment fits within the expectations of up to millions of users, then you're all set. If you're looking at more than that, definitely I'd consider AWS, depend on your app, right? Like that's a good 80-20 rule. So you want to be transparent about your costs when it comes to users. right? We need to provide clear, detailed cost estimates. We need to let them know what the subscription costs are going to be. A lot of the times there should be clear indications of what add-in purchases are going to be and what the incidental costs are going to be, right? We want to make sure that we're providing a great experience for the money, and we're very competitive with other apps that are in the market, and we're looking at what they can replace us with, right? So if we are an app that, is a flashlight app, right? And we want to make sure that the alternatives out there aren't easy to change over, right? Then we help support our business. For example, a flashlight app, a replacement is a candle, right? Are people likely to carry candles? Would they find it's better to replace it with a matches or a lighter, right? Or is it better to use that in a phone, right? Does that kind of utility make sense? How hard is it to come up with other options? At a certain price point, any alternative makes points. So just compare your alternatives and make sure that you're fitting that within the market segment that you're targeting. And we want to make sure that we meet clients' user experience needs by making sure that we have regular updates to the app, that we're keeping it up to date, that we're keeping the look modern and comfortable without doing so many changes that we alienate our existing customer base. And we want to make sure that we're doing regular quality assurance checks, that we're making sure that the app is bug-free, that it's flowing, that the APIs that we're using still work as well as we expected, and hopefully they maybe even get better and cheaper over time. OpenAI, for example, is getting better and it's more accurate in many cases over time, and it's becoming cheaper over time also for enhanced technologies and improvements. So you want to make sure that you're staying up with the models that are the best budget for you and help support your business. And it just requires rigorous testing and gathering user feedback during development and during the maintenance period when people are using the projects. And just to have some fun, let's talk about some of the existing apps out there that have done well, right? Nike Run is a really fun example to look at. It's a fitness app, and its initial budget was $50 million. The actual spend came under that at $48 million, and its return on investment was 35%. And this is a great example of efficient budget management and making sure that you allocate enough budget at the front of the app process so that you can create that great user experience, so that you have availability for testing, that that you can do those user case studies, and that you're meeting those client expectations, and to be able to prepare with flexibility. Nike's so interesting because, of course, they have a huge market, right? So when they launch, they have to be ready for a high demand product, right? And they carry a lot of reputation. So there's a few things they have to get right there, and their budget represented that. Number two, Pokemon Go. This was a gaming app. Its initial budget was $30 million. They ended up spending $10 million over that at $40 million, but their return on investment was 50%. And where they ran into surprises and problems was that they had an explosive growth when they launched. It just became fanatically used, and they had way higher server cost and cost to deliver content, largely because it had augmented reality features that were more expensive than some of the other features, but it made it so popular that it led to having over $1 billion annual revenue from over $1 billion in revenue since 2016. Just two really fun examples and kind of exciting, right? So be prepared to have to handle explosive growth when you're not expecting it, right? Make sure the infrastructure allows it. Make sure that you have the cash structure to handle it. And if you don't, make sure that you handle it gracefully that you can't continue to scale, right? Because if you do, a lot of times have to pay for certain activity limits on servers when you start to exceed certain amounts, right? So, for example, if you're on AWS and you go from a $300 spend to a $50,000 spend or $1 million spend in a short period of time, these systems will expect you to cash up a lot, pay up fairly quick, right? They'll have a certain amount of budget that they allow you to spend. And it's just a matter of setting up the infrastructure to, one, make sure that you have budgets and you're planning for this. But two, you also want to make sure that if you get sudden huge bills, that there's not a mistake, right? So it's a balance between making sure that you have the growth potential, but also that you're not being hacked and abused and people aren't messing with your APIs and stealing your information or just sabotaging your business. There is a balance, and you want to make sure you keep that in mind. So I hope this analysis and exploration was a lot of fun for you guys, and it really helped enlighten some budgeting considerations for your app development process to make sure that you're able to be prepared, that you come into knowing what to expect. And some of the big examples, the Nike and the Pokemon Go, were real world examples, very large examples, but there's a lot of lessons in there. I'd love to talk about those more. If you guys are interested, let me know. The key takeaway here is that successful app development hinges on being transparent with your cost, and that you're able to fund those as the milestones come up, and to make sure that you're planning for scalability. And attention to these details will not only attract investors with confidence, but also make sure that you're satisfying your clients, your users, for high quality products with well-maintained applications that deliver on the promise. And in a rapidly growing global market, that we make sure that we are chasing our dreams, that we are going into markets that are profitable, and that we remain agile while allocating funds to effectively enable development, operation, and marketing. So don't want to forget any of these legs. And in the future, I'm looking forward to seeing how we continue to grow on our technologies, how we enhance our systems with augmented reality, with AI, and with wearable techs that are massively upcoming into the industry and showing a lot of profitability, longevity, and attraction for developers and investors and users. So just keep staying strong, be focused, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one.